This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe, all that other fun stuff. It's week 10 in the NFL season. I'm going to say that again for myself so that I get it correct, so that I get it right. It is week 10 in the NFL season. My name is Sheldon Alexander. I'm joined by Matt Russell, sports betting professional, creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Mr. Matt Russell, how are you doing as we head into week 10 of said NFL season?
Yeah, week 10. Can you believe it? Can you believe it's week 10 already? There. I dropped the embargo. We can officially say that. Part of it is you have to wait until the World Series is over to be like, hey, can you believe we're this far into the NFL season? I see you've got, we were both gone black here. We've both got our morning MOURN this morning. We've got our morning outfits on. I like that the Blue Jays sort of like, prefacing the darkness that is the post Game 7 situation. Like, I love that there is a black version of the jersey that we can just put on. It's like you don't even need to Photoshop to feel like you're in mourning. You're just like, yeah, let me just put on the funeral version of the Blue Jays jersey. I don't have that jersey. I had to go black hoodie here today to sort of still very much in mourning after Saturday's fiasco here in Toronto. But other than that, listen, I was ready to go full bore with football, man. College football and November football and college football. Like, whoo, let's go. And now we're in the double digits when it comes to the NFL. So like, let's finish strong here. I mean, we're literally halfway through the season, but still, never too early to absolutely light up the back half of this season.
You see, the part you don't know, yes, I am wearing a Jays jersey right now. I just haven't changed since Saturday. I've just been so rattled. Haven't changed, haven't slept, showered, just been watching Game 6 and 7 on repeat over and over again in the same spot. I just took the hat off and put it behind me.
Yeah.
But it's been a rough couple days. And I mean, it's funny. I haven't really talked much about it. But I will say this, it's kind of fitting to talk about it now because the way that the Blue Jays lost, it reminded me so much about when we talk to people about gambling on the NFL and how sometimes you just get footballed. You just get footballed. Right?
1,000%. It's going to be my next point. It's going to be my next point. It's literally going to be my next point. It's going to be like that, like watching those two games and go back to even like the 18-inninger in Game 3 and just being like, yeah, this is every college football game I've ever bet on. This is every NFL game that I've ever bet on in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? Where you're like, well, if they just had converted that third down, or if they oh my God, if he just held on to that interception, it hit him right in the hands. It's like, it's the exact same stuff. And you'd be like, yeah, well, that's how sports work. But like, not always baseball and, not hockey and not even really basketball. Just this very specific example of baseball in the World Series got super, super football-y. Like, I was taking bad beats in college football on Saturday, had 3 different ones that were absolute catastrophes. And it was just like, yeah, it just seemed like it was the fourth one that I took that day, and it's just like, yeah, this is just one of those days. And so you just shrug your shoulders and go, all right, it's college football, only it was Major League Baseball World Series. Same thing.
That whole back end of the series is a segment of bad beats.
Yeah,
right. 100%. Like if you had Jays to win the World Series, right? Like, and you're like, oh, I'm letting it ride. Like, damn. Yeah. I don't know. I still can't even talk. The voice isn't even back yet. It's still raspy. I'm still trying to recover here.
Mine's just coming around from just yelling because I went to the game on Saturday and I just screaming at the top of my lungs for 3 hours, just F-bombs at pitchers who were hitting, batters and just everything. So it was podcast on Tuesday was a tough scene, believe me.
Jeez. I don't even know where to go from here, but I mean, I wish I could say that my picks from last week made me feel better, but that is also not the case, as last week was a 4-10 week.
Oh my God. How is that even possible?
I don't even know.
I went 8-2. I was like, oh man, my guy Shell is going to light it up this week.
I don't even know what happened.
How is that even possible?
I don't know what happened, man.
Oh my God. What?
It's just a week that was, okay? It was a week that was.
I know there was a Chiefs issue. I know there was
Well,
that. We're not going
that's
to talk about the Chiefs because they don't play this week. So I just wanted to make. I know there
well,
was that one, but
that's
like,
yeah.
yeah. Oh my god, I thought you absolutely would have crushed it because most of the time I
No,
get you to
no,
change your
no.
pick. Oh
Just
jeez.
wasn't
Okay.
just wasn't a thing. Just wasn't in the
Oh dear.
cards last week, you know.
Okay.
But for the people who might be familiar with what we do or unfamiliar, I guess I should say, folks that are new, we are going to go through each and every NFL game. I'm going to give you a pick to each and every NFL game. And then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it could be heading into kickoff. I then try to come out on the other side with a much more informed pick. I play the role of the viewer. And sometimes Matt convinced me to change my pick. And other times I foolishly don't listen. But that's the joke. That's the bit. That's the show. And, still up on the season, barely. But we keep things going into week 10. Week 10 bye weeks include Bengals, Cowboys, Titans, and Chiefs. And we begin on Thursday Night Football with the Raiders in Denver to take on the Broncos. Broncos laying 9.5 points at home. Fourth quarter, Bo Nix did it again last week. And it was, I mean, he did it against a really good defense, but I feel as if they play so many crazy games, these
Right.
Broncos.
Mhm.
And I didn't even realize that they were 7-2 on the season. They've won 6 in a row. Like, there's a lot going on with that team.
Yeah.
That was just like, wait, what? They're 7-2. Didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Raiders, meanwhile, like if you told me the Raiders and Broncos had a much closer record, like the records were just closer to each other,
Sure.
like they met somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
maybe I'd believe that. Like it'd be
Yeah.
closer.
Yeah.
The Raiders lost in a shootout last week to the Jags, which is very tough to do. But Brock Bowers made their offense look like it was, of more than a functioning offense, as he was just in beast mode. And then now after that overtime game, you're getting into a Thursday night football game. And I don't like laying 9.5 points is just a lot. And the reason I'm on the Raiders here to start and the plus 9.5 is mostly, your basic, hey, it's a divisional game. Cool. I get that. But mostly the Broncos just keep playing these wild and crazy games, regardless of who they're playing. So I don't know if I can trust them laying 9.5 points. And the Raiders, we just saw it. As long as they have Brock Bowers, it looks like their offense can at least do stuff. And if your offense can do stuff, I could take 9.5 points on a Thursday night. Let's go.
Yeah, my memory is starting to be jogged here. I'm pretty sure that I couldn't quite talk you into the Raiders last week, right? And I think that might be one of the games that were potentially swapped because you're
No,
like
I
two and a
definitely
half
was on.
points with the
Definitely was on the
Jags.
Jags last week.
Yeah, it was obviously probably less to do with the Jags and more to do with the Raiders and only having to sort of lay 2.5 points, right? Which is like, yeah, completely understandable sort of take there. But then you watch the game and you go, oh my God, like the Raiders offense is fully functional with Brock Bowers. And it's weird to say because he's a tight end and he's only in his second season. But like think about it this way, right? Like you watch some of the non-quarterback division. You watch like the Cowboys without CD Lamb, or even like the Giants without Malik Neighbors, and you go like, it's not that much worse without those sort of like top level guys. Now, not every top level guy has been out this season, right? We haven't had a Justin Jefferson injury or, so on and so forth, right? But it's like Brock Bowers is, might be making a run here early in his career at being one of the most important position skill players on offense to his team. Now, again, a lot of that stuff is kind of relative, right? Where it's like it's not as big of a deal if CD Lamb is out because they have George Pickens, and you can give all kinds of examples with other teams. Whereas the Raiders, like, the Ashton Genty thing is, a work in progress, I guess, and, has very little to do with him, maybe, as far as his success so far early in his rookie season. But, like, it might be, like, if Brock Bowers isn't on this offense, that's built on a two tight end system. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, I don't think Michael Mayer is very good from, like, a pass catching perspective. But, like, just the fact that he's out there, like, they're trying to get him the ball because he's wide open half the time. And whether he catches it or not is a different story. But like the whole offense is built on the idea that those two guys, drafted pretty highly over the last 3 or 4 years, are supposed to unlock everything when it comes to the Raiders offense. And by and large, that sort of happens. So, I don't think the market is really acknowledging, given the fact that the Raiders had kind of been pushed down through the bottom of their rating because they had, lost all of these games and the games that they won the Titans game, for example, hadn't been all that impressive. And so I don't think the market's really gone like, hey, we're not going nuts here. We're not saying the Raiders are like a league average team or anything like that, but it's like they're not this bad relative to the betting market, right? And so I think they have to go up a little bit here, which they haven't really been. Meanwhile, you have the Broncos who have sort of stuck at this number, which is like teetering on, like, as we like to call, like the 60 out of 100, right? Where it's like you're a division, potential division winner. We're maybe not as sold on you for like the Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. And I was with you, you mentioned it. I looked at the exact same thing before the show. I was like, damn, the Broncos have won 6 straight because, again, so many of them they've been favored against the Giants and the Jets, where it's been ATS losses. And again, I don't, if you just said a team name right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you their record offhand, but I would be able to tell you what their rating is in the betting market, give or take a point or two. And that's all that really matters to me, right? So I don't really care that the Broncos have won 6 straight. It doesn't make me sort of trust them anymore because I watched that game against the Texans. And I've watched all the other games where the Broncos offense doesn't do anything for 3 quarters, exception being against the Dallas Cowboys, which, like, the line is over there for teams who absolutely run a train on the Dallas Cowboys. And so whatever that means, I don't even know what that means. Um, and so I just look at it and I go like, yeah, the Raiders defense is like, it's not great, but like, it's actually pretty good. Metrically, it's actually pretty decent. By the way, the Jags, I thought, played a pretty good game. They also got a 68-yard field goal, which sort of helped their deal last week. So, yeah, I look at it and I go, I think the number is probably too high. It was 10 in the look ahead line. So even if the idea is that the Raiders only get kind of a half point off of a semi-key number bump type of thing because of how much better their offense looked and how much easier life is for Geno Smith. Now, again, we could get ourselves into a position here come Thursday night where Geno's throwing interceptions and the pressure is too much. Like, that's the thing that's going to maybe potentially scare me away and actually have me shift towards the total for this game, something I don't usually do. I kind of put out like one total a week. I think we've used the total twice on all primetime weeknight games this season. Might be time to get back into the total scene for that. But again, we're talking point spreads here. And I think you're probably on the right track here when it comes to this 9.5. Again, the fact that the 10 went away on the reopen and hasn't come back, just from just kind of a market analysis perspective, probably indicates that, yeah, like I said, you're probably on the right track here. Talked about the idea, obviously, the Raiders coming off of the bye week, right? So it's not just Bowers is back. It's all right, let's do some self-scouting over the bye week. And, let's plan for going forward here with Bowers. That's a nice little reset. Meanwhile, the Broncos still haven't had their bye week. They're still a week away. They still got to play week 11. Their bye week is in week 12. You can win 7 straight games, but all of these games have been close. Like I was mentioning with regards to the Texans gave the Broncos away, gave that game away, partly obviously with the CJ Stroud injury meant they could not score anymore, but they also had some horrific clock management stuff down the stretch. And again, you just give, yeah, well, that too, right? And you just go, and you give a team enough opportunity. You give a team enough opportunity to score points on you, eventually they're going to do so. And that was kind of the deal with regards to that game. Because again, like, if Stroud doesn't get hurt, you got a 9-point Texans lead with that defense, and you're able to extend a couple more drives, a couple, more, fresh set of downs. Like, the Texans are going to win that game, and they're going to cover a 1.5-point spread. So the Broncos keep kind of getting away with stuff here. And so when you talk about like the wins, but certainly the games kind of piling up on a short week, I think they are less sort of physically capable of handling a short week than maybe the Raiders are, even though the Raiders did play 5 quarters last week.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one for sure. And you're talking about, that's where the interesting part comes in of just winning games and then covering a 9.5-point spread, right?
Totally.
Talking 2 different ball games here. And that's a big reason why I'm on the Raiders plus 9.5. Let's keep going here. We move on to, early Sunday morning for us as we're heading to, is this Germany? Is this where this game is?
I believe. Yeah,
Just
we tore down
insane.
the wall for this game, just for this one. We did it 35 years ago, 36 years ago. We did it. Reagan.
We got the Falcons. We got the Falcons at the Colts. Colts laying 6.5 points. And first, I'm going to be very honest here before I get into what these two teams did last week.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna be very honest. I was on the Colts -6.5, and then I went, wait, this is in Germany? What? Hold on. Let me switch that over here. I'm starting with Atlanta plus the points. Now, reason being, Colts last week, 4 turnovers. Colts had 4 turnovers in their first 8 weeks of the season and then had 6 in week 9. Right. Now, maybe we chalk that up to playing in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did their Pittsburgh thing. I don't know. But bottom line is 6.5 points is a lot of points for a game that is in Germany and not even a home, like just not a home game. And the biggest thing I always talk about with these games is I don't know how these two teams are going to respond to traveling across the world and having to play a football game. What are the field conditions going to be like? Because we know how both these teams like to play in, indoors on the track, and how are both teams going to respond? I don't know. Is Drake London still going to be balling as much as he was last week? Because he was putting in work last week. So when there's so much in the air like this, I'm going to take the points, and that's going to be my starting spot here at +6.5, especially when I thought the Falcons looked okay last week. Penix, he looked better coming off, the injury and missing the game in the debacle that was Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. It does make me nervous they don't have a kicker, but what can you do about that? Give me the 6 points with the Falcons. At least that's where I'm going to start with this one in Germany.
Yeah, I it's funny. Like I don't know. I know. I'm not going to name any names or whatever, but like I've seen people being like, "Oh man, at this number, like the Colts are the play," and it's like, and, they're talking like weather about Indianapolis and whether the dome's gonna be closed. I'm like, you can close the dome all you want in Indianapolis. The game's not in Indianapolis. Like, right? Like people
was a real thing.
That was the thing I saw on Twitter. But like, and you're just and you're like, and you can't be that sort of indignant about things, and you don't know the game is going to be played. Just a personal sort of opinion on that.
Fair.
No shade. Otherwise.
It's fair enough.
Yeah, so I guess part of the reason I sort of bring that up is because I don't really know how we can get to this number at 6.5. And if you're going to do the thing, and listen, I sort of felt this way a little bit about the Colts going from indoor team, and even the road games that they've played have been largely indoors or against the Titans, which like doesn't even really count as a real sports match at this point. I had the sort of idea too. It's like, it could look a little different outdoors in Pittsburgh. Like, did they have to turn the ball over that many times? No, they didn't. But my point is if you're going to kind of give the Colts a pass for playing in that sort of a weird scenario, then you have to give the Falcons some credit for fighting their backside off down 21-7 in New England, because it's the same deal, right? It's a dome team going and playing outdoors. And so it's like, why are we giving, the Colts the benefit of the doubt while we're not necessarily doing the same? And I've heard some people say like, they turned the ball over 6 times and they only lost by 7. It's like, yeah, well, that was also a 17-point game. And by the way, I still feel like the Steelers defense is not very good. You just, you live and die by turnovers, right? Yeah. And so like, things got a little bit weird there. So again, if they were returning home here and maybe it was, a different kind of market setup, but at a 6.5 point, underdog here, and as you mentioned, like I don't know what to make of anything. I'm pretty sure I've never won an international game, period, because like I feel like we're just kind of guessing all the time about how these teams are going to react. And so maybe Shane Steichen knows better about how to deal with this than Raheem Morris, but like who's to say? And maybe that still translates to victory, but not necessarily won by 7 points. So it doesn't seem like the Falcons, who, again, I think we have a pretty good handle on how to treat the Falcons, right? When the Falcons get rated, like, I hate to say it, when they get rated like a respectable team, like a league average type of team, it usually results in needing to like back Homer Simpson style into like the hedge, right? They cover that game and the market doesn't really have any respect for that. Like they're just kind of like, yeah, no, we're still giving them sort of the, kind of Cardinals treatment. The Cardinals were 3.5 point, underdogs to the Cowboys, right? So again, it doesn't matter what the result is. We're talking about how the market is treating them for going forward. And there isn't some massive upgrade. Now, maybe again, Parker Romo makes that kick. We go to overtime. The Falcons win. Maybe the market shoots it up. And now all of a sudden, because the Colts lost, we're talking about like a 3.5 point game. Now I'm interested in the Colts all of a sudden, right? So the number matters more than anything else here. And so this, doesn't give a real downgrade for the Colts as a team that, as you and I have talked about, we've pushed them through the top end of their range, and we've done it twice. And the two games that they have lived in the top end of their range, i.e., in the high to mid to high 60s, 66, 67, they covered against the Titans at home. Cool. Like, you get a certificate of merit for that, I suppose. But like, I'm also not going to like cement you as a contender for doing that. And
Yeah.
then that game against the Steelers, where, like I said, they get down 17 points, they turn over the ball, and it gets really sloppy. So, if they win this game by 7 or more, then okay. Like, I will then sort of stamp your passport, so to speak, appropriate given the circumstance, as a team that is a contender. But right now, if you're going to rate them in the same neighborhood as the Rams, Ravens, and Packers, I'm going to need you to do a little bit better in that game last week, and I'm going to need to see it to believe it when it comes to this game. So, yeah, I think the number's a little bit too high here for just a wonky setup, which, I'm sure one team will come out absolutely flat and get absolutely raced by like 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I just have no idea who it is. So,
Yeah, and it's clearly one of those things too for the Colts where they get down early and then now, that's not the Daniel Jones position you want to be in if he's your quarterback, right? Where it's
for
like you
sure.
have to basically throw the ball and you're in Pittsburgh and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, totally makes sense. Totally with you. I just can't conceivably lay the 6.5 on the road in Germany.
Yeah.
So let's keep going here and we move on to Sunday's action. And we have the New England Patriots who are taking on the Tampa Bay Bucs. Bucs coming off a bye. Pats coming off a very ugly win. Drake May winning ugly, which I think is a good, learning experience for a young quarterback.
Hmm.
I will say this though. The Patriots continue to like have a really good season, but if they go into Tampa Bay and beat Tampa, I'll be really, really, really impressed. And I
Hmm.
know the spread's only 2.5 points, but
Hmm.
I'm on the Patriots here. I'm going to take the Patriots and the points. My thing here with the Bucs, I gotta get an update on how injured or which guys might be back or if they
Sure.
got guys back. I'm sure a week off would help Baker deal with some bumps and bruises that he might have had.
Yeah.
But overall, I just like what the Pats are on right now. They're just rolling, able to win ugly. I like that. Gives me some hope. And yeah, 2.5. This is another one of those spreads we've been talking about all season, Matt, where
Yeah.
the difference in I want a 3-point spread here, right? I want to be able to take the Pats -3, and it's not
Sure.
there. So I'm just taking the 2.5. This is
Yeah.
where I'm at here.
It's interesting. We don't talk about like the order of operations, as far as like what games to talk about. But this game, I think, is really informed in a couple of different ways by the previous 2 games that we've talked about. One is
Well
this
produced by the
see
truck, by the
that
controller.
they're doing a
Great
great
producing
job,
job. Yeah.
unbelievable work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first is it having to do with Brock Bowers, and he's kind of the poster boy, if you will, for the NFL and the players and just the injuries that pile up that so many guys miss like a week and are back sort of the next week, right? Like Drake London is an example, speaking of like, players from previous games that we've talked about. But like the amount of injuries that like a guy goes into a bye week and then comes out of the bye week and they're just like, yeah, he's fine. Not even questionable, like totally like good to go. Because it's like that's the attrition that the NFL is, right? Where it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of big time injuries where it's like, oh, he's out for a while, surgery, like this, that, or whatever. But there are so many injuries that it's like, man, if I just got a week off, I would be okay. And
Yeah.
Bowers is that example, like London is that example. And when you have the bye week like the Buccaneers have had, like, and how injured that they may have been, of course, Baker's going to play through a bunch of stuff. Where these other guys, the Emeka Ibuka, he's played through a bunch of stuff off the injury report, like no designation whatsoever. Bucky Irving had a bit of a longer injury, but it looks like he is going to be back. Or again, this is as of Wednesday morning. But so many of these injuries that we see on a week to week basis are like, man, I could just use a week off and like I'll be back to, sort of full strength. And so when you look at it from that perspective, any one of these teams, getting a bye and coming back in here, whereas, again, the Patriots, they have, injuries of their own. Keishon Butte is one of these like underrated players, but like matters to Drake May and the Patriots offense at large. And so I think it's kind of a tough spot. And it's interesting, for you to say that you're looking to be impressed, or you're going to be impressed if the Patriots can win this game, and taking them and being like, you're ready to be impressed. Like for me, like logically, I'd be like, I'd be really impressed if they win this game. And so it's like, I should probably bet the other way, especially under 3 here, right? Like just kind of logically, like if you're going to be impressed, that means they've surpassed expectations. And so we talked about the
Just
Falcons
trying to
rating,
be ahead of the
obviously.
curve here, Matt. Just trying to be ahead of the curve. All
We
right.
talked about the Falcons rating kind of come down, but part of that too is that the Patriots rating had gone up. Like that's why they were 6-point favorites in a game that, like, I would put it this way again, like speaking of these past 2 games, the preseason, the look ahead line for this game is Tampa Bay -1.5. It's Tampa Bay -2.5. I don't know that would have changed going back to the summer. Even just quickly going back to Colts Falcons, you know what the look ahead summer line, which these international games, right? Like some books put out lines for every single game in the season as far as look ahead is concerned, but more books just put out kind of the big games, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all the international games. Do you know what the look ahead line for Falcons and the Colts was?
Pick
So you
them.
can try to. Yeah, it was actually Falcons -1.5.
Okay. Yeah.
We've seen like a 7.5 point swing from summer from that, right? And so again, who knows what's going to happen in that game? But that's usually kind of like a dicey look. I think Tampa Bay, and as far as much as we kind of hoped that there were going to be things here for the Patriots this season, which have come to fruition. Again, part of that is the easy schedule that they had to deal with. Again, like I think I would be impressed if the Patriots won this game.
Mhm.
And again, part of it is the fact that they did win that game last week kind of makes them more likely to lose this game this week. Like I don't know if people necessarily kind of get what I'm saying with regards to that, right? But like in the ebb and
No, I
flow
get
of
it.
the season where you can, sometimes you can have a letdown. Winning that game barely last week is going to potentially result in a letdown. And so a non-conference game, if you will. We talked about the Broncos not having their bye week yet. Patriots haven't had they get the super late week 14 bye. This is what I'm checking out there. And then having Thursday coming up here against the Jets. Like it's the Jets, I get it, but it's still a division game.
Mhm.
Still Thursday. There's going to be some preparation, I guess, in theory, for the Jets this coming week. So, this is one that could easily, as they've won six games in a row, they could easily drop and then go ahead and beat the Jets, beat the Bengals, beat the Giants, which are their next 3 games, and still be like rocking and rolling at like 10-3 or 11-3 by the time their week 14 bye week comes around, right? And so it just feels like a spot in the schedule where the Patriots are going to play maybe to the bottom of their range, and a spot in the schedule where the Buccaneers could play towards closer to the top of their range. Because honestly, as you and I talked about, even though they managed to win that game against the Saints, Bucs did not look good down the stretch towards their bye week. They needed a bye week badly, and I think they're going to take advantage of that and play pretty well at home against the Patriots this week.
This is one where the pick is going to be changed, and it's because of sometimes I have to remind myself of certain things. And when I say remind myself, I mean listen to what you're saying in terms of
Have you remind me?
the
Yeah.
bye week and just the importance of the bye week, especially with a team like the Bucs, who, yeah, you're right. They were winning heading into their bye week, but they weren't looking good, and they were struggling to suit up enough receivers to play. There was just a lot going on, and so in this instance where I am going to change the pick, that's going to be the main reason why. And
Okay.
I just think it's one of those where the bye week is super important. The Pats, it's not, I can't say they looked great. I mean, I said it myself. I didn't think that they looked great last week. So when you add up all the math, I mean, the math is mathin' that the pick should be Tampa Bay -2.5. And for the record, too, I got to shout out. I should have written down the name because someone did write in and said that they do hear the sound effect. Yes. I forgot. I'm so stupid. I should have taken down the names so that I could like shout them out. But someone on the YouTube page did say, they're like,
We can
yes, we
hear
do
it.
hear. We can hear it.
For some reason I can't. some reason I
Yeah, I
can't.
don't know what's going on. It's
I don't
probably
know.
something that I've messed up for sure, or that the control room's messed up, I should say.
Yeah, the
But the
control rooms.
control room's got a lot going on. So you got to
Yeah,
give them some grace at certain points. Because
yeah.
they're working with a lot. They're working with a lot, and there's only so
They
much you can do, right?
they
Only
do.
so much
They
you can do.
largely do a great job. It's
Yeah,
just there's a wire. Somebody didn't plug something in.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
one of those old timey like phone things where like a Mad Men thing, right? Where like they've got the room full of like women just plugging the like phone lines in,
Yes, yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes.
It's like that. There's
Yeah,
just there's just
too
some
much,
gal, there's some
too
gal
much
from
going on.
1965 just in there like not plugging the correct one in. So she's gonna go cry in the bathroom.
Yeah. Bucks -2.5. Let's keep it going though to where we head next. San Francisco and the
Mm.
49ers at home to the Los Angeles Rams. Rams 3.5 point road favorites. And listen, the Rams looked great last week coming off of their bye week, continuing to roll, offense continuing to look good. Puka Nakua getting banged up again, but you know what? Their coach decided, do you know what? Maybe we'll let them chill on the sidelines because we're in a blowout game and there's no
Yeah,
need to play our guy
that's right.
who's bagged up. Imagine that. What a concept, right?
What
What a
an
concept.
incredible concept. Yeah.
But yeah, the Rams now find themselves in a rematch against the Niners. As we remember a couple weeks ago, Thursday night, maybe when the Mac Jones era began to the mainstream, we'll say, there's some Mac
Sure.
Jones supporters here riding high for a while, but that Thursday
Yeah.
night game might have been the game that, the rest of the world caught up. But
Yeah.
Mac Jones balled last week again. CMC balled last week again against the Giants, and San Fran continuing to figure out a way to just make this work. But
Mhm.
this is a big boy matchup. I'm starting out on San Fran plus 3.5, and I'm not going
Mhm.
to lie to you. It's because they're giving me the extra half point here, which
Mhm.
is something we talked about a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
about how they're just putting that out there for you. And my thing here is the Rams. You would assume the Rams got to get this game, right? Like the Rams, you got to split the season series with the Niners. And,
Yeah.
after getting, you want to say embarrassed because that was an embarrassing loss for them in that first game that they played this year. But at the same time, the Niners just keep figuring out ways to hold this ship together. And maybe they don't win this game, but they can keep it close. And if it's a field goal game, I like sitting on the Niners with that 3.5 points. So even though I know it should be pushing me to take the Rams here, I'm on the Niners to keep it close.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. I mean, it is from the perspective of like we kind of treat the 3.5s like the strip club sending the limousine around town, right? Where it's just like just coming for a
Champagne
limousine
ride.
ride. Yeah, just
Champagne
come for a
ride.
free limousine. Right, the 3.5 is the free limousine of sports betting at this point. It's like, come on in, it's free. Like, yeah, are we gonna make a couple of stops here at Spearmint Rhino? Like, yeah, we are, and like, yeah, that's up to you if you want to get loose after that. So yeah, like it is, and that's what I don't get about this line too, because it's like, hey, you want the 49ers? Like, come on, get it. I'm like, I actually do. Like, I'll hop in the limousine here. Like, we'll see where the night takes us. And so I don't really understand the line in that like the Rams. Listen, man, like the Rams, I think are really, really good. I
Mhm.
don't know on a given day like whether Puka Nacua can make it through a game at this
Yeah.
point. It's one thing like holding him out and be like, yeah, he's good to play, but it's like, are he's gonna make it to the fourth quarter in this game?
Yeah.
And the one thing I was surprised about the last time these two teams met wasn't that the 49ers won the game, because you'll recall, like we thought there was a very, that was at least
Yeah.
a bigger possibility than the betting line that shot that game up to 8.5. And even just looking at that line, right, where you go, okay, that line was 8.5 in
Jeez.
LA, and you move that over to San Francisco, and now you as we say, you kind of take a half point or 1.5 points for either side, and you flip it 3, and now the line quote unquote should be 5.5. But like the 49ers won the game, so like I know why 5.5 is now down to 3.5.
Mhm.
I also think it kind of should be a little bit more than that because, again, the 49ers have another injury, rookie Michael Williams. He goes out for the season. And it's like, yeah, we're just going to keep piecing it together. But like also, there's also a possibility of Brock Purdy being back in the mix. And like, yeah, I know you were like one of the first guys out on the street grabbing the mixtape that Mac Jones was handing out, right? Like he was
Yes.
underground before the
Hold
Rams.
on. Have you
Before the
noticed?
Rams.
Sorry, I had to interrupt you here. Have you noticed? The Niners intro where they had the boombox? They're coming out with the boombox. Mac Jones is right there in the mix, and he's there. He's in it. He's bumping. He's right behind Big Trent. Like he's ready. Sorry, I just
no, I think he's capable of running the ones and twos, but like, yeah, I don't really, I'm going to be sort of, again, I'm going to be coaxed into the limousine.
Yeah,
going to be in the limo. It's going to be maybe a bottle of something there, and it's just going to be like, all right, let's see what happens, and then all of a sudden I'm going to like wake up after the fact and be like, God, I feel like we shouldn't have gotten in the limo. Like, I think we had a pretty good time. We paid for it. We ended up paying for the good time that we had, but like, probably was a mistake. I can't lay 3.5 in this matchup with the team on the road.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, like I've had confidence in Kyle Shanahan to kind of like make it work. Like we were on them last week against the Giants, just going like, if you just hand the ball to Christian McCaffrey like 30 times, you're just going to win this game. I don't know that that's necessarily the case here, but like there's enough still with the 49ers to be like 3.5 point home dogs against like your quote unquote arch rival. I don't even think I finished the sentence when I said the thing that I was surprised about was how high scoring that Thursday night game was.
Yeah.
In this matchup. So again, I think this could be a little bit more low scoring, a little more closer, and again, closer to the vest. And, again, when that's the case, then like a late field goal could be the difference maker. And by the way, like I haven't seen a dude miss kicks harsher than Josh Hardy did in that game against the Saints.
Yeah.
And it just made me, it reminded me of like you and I talking about like that Eagles game where we were like, if Josh Hardy just kicks the ball 50 yards right or left instead of getting it blocked and returned for a touchdown, a point spread covering touchdown by the Eagles. And I was like, and then I'm watching Josh Hardy and it's like the DiCaprio meme. I'm like pointing at the screen like, yeah, that kid.
That's it.
That's the one where you missed it by 50 yards. Like, that's the one that I would prefer, actually. Like, couldn't you have done that a few weeks ago? And so, yeah, like when we're talking about, making kicks, I know your boy Moody's not around anymore, so that has to be an advantage to the 49ers as, as
Eddie
as
Pinero.
Cardi. Yeah, man, you texted me one time. You're like, we're an Eddie Pinero household over here.
Eddie P, let's go. Eddie P.
So
Eddie P doesn't miss. I should be knocking on wood. I'm knocking on wood.
I'm knocking on wood. It's a disaster. Why would you say that? Yeah, no. So I think like close game, relatively low scoring game, and some potential Eddie P over Josh K or Jay Cardi, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a historical nature to this where somehow Shanahan just plays McVay close, no matter who's the quarterback, no matter who's injured, who's not injured. Shanahan just always has something for McVay. Yeah. That doesn't mean they necessarily win, but they play above their heads most often than not. We move on, though, to another interesting matchup. So we have the Ravens, who are 3.5 point favorites in Minnesota, taking on the Vikings. And I don't really know what to make of this one. And I will say I'm starting from the same position as our previous game where I'm on the Vikings plus the 3.5 points. And I will say this might just be recency bias because I just watched the Vikings defense shut down the Lions at home. And I don't know how many defenses I've seen shut down the Lions at home in recent memory where the Lions normally are rolling. JJ McCarthy, a lot of question marks surrounding him. He looked pretty good in that game. Now, a big part of that was they were able to run the ball, and that made things a lot easier. So the question I'm going to start with is, will they be able to run the ball against a Ravens defense that also appears to be looking pretty good? You talked about a couple games ago, team coming out of the bye and getting, a little bit more refreshed and able to regroup. And that could be the Ravens right now as they, looked pretty good last week in their first game off the bye as well. So my starting point is Vikings plus 3.5. Rules driven, I'm getting back in the limo to start, or I'm standing on the outside of the limo contemplating, talking with the boys. Like, what are we doing here? What do we think, fellas? What do we think?
Yeah, I think in this case, and you got 3.5 up there. I think 4 is readily available over at DraftKings, particularly. So let's hop on that because I'm right there with you, and it's more like again, with so many of these bad teams in the NFL, like the hardest part about this
Mhm.
is going, what am I supposed to make out of bad team, good team versus bad team matchups? And like, how am I supposed to either, change a team's rating because like they pummeled the Titans or whatever? And so we went into last week, you'll recall, and I, said like, we're taking the Ravens here. We're giving -7.5 on the road. And we're doing so because I think the Dolphins are probably a bad team, despite the fact that they had won the week before. And I referenced the against the spread record of bad teams after they pull off these wins, because even the bad teams are going to get the occasional win, especially when they're playing other bad teams. You can't handle success. That's bad team problems, right? And 4 days after beating the Browns, I'm willing to bet. That's
Mhm.
what we do here, that the Dolphins aren't able to handle the success of actually getting a win.
Yeah.
And so people could be coaxed into +7.5 because it's a juicy little number, a little limousine action there, and take the Dolphins. Are like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But as part of that, if I'm going to assign Dolphins bad team status, and then they're going to perform like a bad team, and I'm going to win that bet, I have to then be like, well, the Ravens just beat a bad team last week. And so when we go into our market rating estimations and all of that sort of thing, and we go, yeah, when Lamar Jackson comes back, we are hitting them right back up into the high 60s, the land of the Ravens, the Rams, the Eagles, the Packers, the Lions, the Bills, right? We are making the assumption that all's well when it comes to the Ravens. And I just need to see more from the Ravens to be able to sort of believe that. Because again, like whether it's the Titans or the Dolphins or the Jets or whatever, that's not doing it for me. And it's not their fault. Like they went out and they won the game relatively easily and they covered and we cashed all our bets and all that sort of thing. And we love that about them. But my thing was when all of those guys got hurt, it was going to be like, all right, if the market is going to return the Ravens to this like ideal area from a rating perspective, I'm going to fade that. But I had to wait a week because it was the Dolphins.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally that was it. Now this is the opportunity where the Ravens are a 4-point road favorite against a kind of tricky spot to play here, and a defense that is like really relying on this general concept of we're going to trade for Alohi Gilman from the Chargers. We're going to be able to move Kyle Hamilton like into the box, and he's going to be like a disruptor in all of this situation. And it's like, man, that seems like a real, it's really hinging on that sort of being able to just vex the opposing team. And watching that game, as much as the Dolphins didn't score a touchdown in that game, they moved the ball against the Ravens defense. And the Dolphins are very much an offense like with Tua, where it's like, all right, we're going to do this, this, and this, and you're going to throw the ball there. And if you can't throw the ball there, then this outlet is going to be available to you. It's very basic. And so I was a little concerned by the fact that this very basic offense was very basically moving the ball into the red zone on repeat. Now, again, when things get tighter, that space that Tua has to throw into as part of the system really kind of gets tight. And he's not going to take off and run. So you don't have to worry about Tua from that perspective, right? And they really only have two players, Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane. The Vikings are, with JJ McCarthy, are going to play a very similar sort of style in that they're going to be like, O'Connell is literally going to be like, you need to throw the ball here, and if you don't throw, and if that's not available, you need to throw it here. Like I was intentionally doing the sound there.
I'm
That's
with you.
going,
I'm with you.
yeah, just in case people thought the control room was at it again. Um, and so it's like, well, if you can then get up and down the field just doing that stuff, you also have the playmakers. You also have the Justin Jeffersons that can win the one-on-one. You also have the McCarthys who are able to use their legs in order to be that extra weapon potentially in the red zone. So I think the Vikings are going to move the ball like the Dolphins did, but they're going to score the ball, if you will, better than the Dolphins did in order to kind of stay in this game. And then so you look at the Vikings defense, and I think they're going to do a infinitely better job than the crappy Dolphins defense did last week, which again still limited the Ravens to like not that many yards relative to the final score, right? Like I had Lamar Jackson over, it was around like 270 like rushing and passing yards combined. and like he didn't really get all that close to it. And it's like, well, then how many is he going to get against the Vikings, which are doing like all kinds of stuff here, right? So it gets a lot more difficult for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense here. Again, we still haven't, the Derrick Henry thing is still not great.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, like I think the Vikings here, I'm impressed with JJ McCarthy. Like the numbers aren't going to jump out at you, but he has the confidence at the very least to like go to the place the ball needs to go to and like hum it in there. It's weird to say, man. I kind of like JJ McCarthy better than I do Tua Tagovailoa at this point in their careers, and certainly going forward. But even like just the fact that it's like a right now thing,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we need to be fading the Ravens until they prove against a good team, particularly on the road, or even an average team on the road, that like they are back to being back. And
Yeah.
again, we haven't seen that.
Yeah, and also just the job that the Vikings defense did in shutting down a very potent running game last week. And
Yeah,
you bring up Derrick Henry, right? It's like, all right, Derrick Henry, good luck. If this is a week you're gonna go off, I'll sit back and tip my cap to you, right?
yeah.
So interesting one there, but yes, Vikings +4 is the pick there. Our next game, we got the Jags heading to Houston to take on the Texans. Texans laying 1.5 points. Texans defense continues to play super well, doing all they could, really, right? Played the Broncos tough. CJ got hurt, leading to Davis Mills time. And hey, shouts to Davis Mills. He's still there. It was like, oh, familiar face. Hey, forgot about that guy
Yeah.
for a second.
That neck hasn't gotten less long, you know? Still long.
Oh man, they couldn't figure out how to score. Neck not long enough to score from the 1 yard line, which is just super weird. But
Yeah.
not sure if CJ is going to be back. But either way, for me in this one, at the 1.5 points, I think I'm trusting again the Texans defense to do more of the job. And I will say this: Davis Mills is a serviceable backup. So even if he is the one that is in the lineup, it could be one of those situations where we've seen before with these other teams where the offenses has struggled, but then the backup comes in who's just going to run the plays.
Mm.
Right? Like I know that
Yeah.
sounds crazy. I guess it would be our next game when we talk about the Cardinals. We'll get to that, right?
Oh,
But
tease
it's a tease, as we say in the biz,
in the
right? But it's
biz.
just one of those things where, the Jags winning in a shootout against the Raiders, the Jags are just very Jagsy still. And so you would think they should be able to win this game, but the Jags are the Jags. You never know what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I think I was waiting for you to do the thing where you do, is this a CJ Stroud number or is this a Davis Mills number? That's my favorite Shell
It was
thing, where
just, it doesn't matter.
you're like, I'm not sure I care. And it's like, well, the market does.
Of course. Yes.
No, I don't even. It's not necessarily even of course, because we've seen the Falcons and not the Falcons, the Cardinals. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Well, even honestly, the Falcons. I actually, a bit of a Freudian slip there, but like when Kirk Cousins came in for Penix that one game before the game, the market was like, yeah, I don't know, that's fine. And then of course we saw Kirk Cousins play, and we're like, ooh, not fine, very much not fine.
Yeah.
So Mills comes in and he plays last week, and it's always tricky when the backup like is forced to come in. My thing was sort of, there's like a checklist, right, when it comes to the backup having to start a game, which, and by the way, like this is a Mills number, right? Like the Stroud number would be sort of closer to 3.5, essentially, for obviously the Texans. So the checklist is like, has this guy played? Davis Mills, yes. Has he played in this system for this team? Yes. Is he playing at home? Yes. Is he playing against a defense that I could see a backup quarterback being able to take advantage of, or at least not be bothered by? Yes. Right. So like there's a lot of sort of positives here with Davis Mills, and the idea that he's going to get, again, what the market thinks here is that Stroud is not going to play. That he's going to get these snaps. The sort of other check mark, if you will, is the offense fundamentally changed by the new guy coming in, or the backup guy coming in, right? It's the Ravens when they turn to your guy from the Cowboys, and Cooper Rush, and it's like, that's not the same thing. That's not even close to the same thing from like what we can do type of thing. Even like Tyler Huntley, it's like, well, that's a poor man's version, but like at least it's a reasonable facsimile. Like I can
Mhm.
see what you're trying to draw at that point. Whereas the Cooper Rush thing is just random scribbles. I was like, that's not an elephant. I don't know why you think that's an elephant. So the point is like, yeah, you're like, I don't care. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I care either. Because again, the defense, by the way, like can another check mark, right? Can the defense win the game by themselves?
Yeah.
And if D'Amico Ryans doesn't get out of the way and the offensive strategy with regards to the clock management, if those guys just get out of the way, the D'Amico Ryans defense, that wearing that hat is fully capable of rattling Trevor Lawrence to like his very core. And so, yeah, the Jags won this game the first time around back in Jacksonville, but I think the Texans are the better team. It just kind of took a long, while to get there, and they're not being rated like they're the better team. Obviously, they're rated sort of like they're around the same essentially. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think you make the bet on the Texans, and then if you get CJ Stroud, getting all kinds of value, right? And so I don't think we would get that information until Saturday or even Sunday. But also, it's the NFL, so they're probably going to tell us early on, and they're probably going to tell us that CJ Stroud needs to take the week off because he got concussed last week, and that's just kind of how this works. So yeah, I'm totally fine with that. If you basically just need, kind of a cheap money line here, like a -115 or -120 on the Texans, I'm totally down with that as well.
Yeah, super like I'm interested in this game just because it'll tell me more about the Jags because the Jags are one of those teams that I have no read on from a week to week basis. They just got no idea what they're going to do. Sometimes they're scoring 0 points. Next week they're like throwing all the touchdowns. It's just like what is happening here?
Yeah.
Anyways, next game we got the Arizona Cardinals, the aforementioned Arizona Cardinals, heading to Seattle for a big time NFC West showdown against the Seahawks. Seahawks at home and laying 6.5 points. Seattle continues to roll, just dominating win against the Commanders, which we will get to. And now a big boy matchup against the Cardinals and their new starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett,
Yeah.
which this is such an interesting one. And I'll be honest, before when I first sat down,
Okay.
when I wrote in the pick, I had Arizona plus the 6.5 points. And then while I was sitting here, while I was just going over the picks before we started, I
Mhm.
changed my pick to Seattle. Reason being,
Mm.
reason being, I'm on the operation of the Seattle Seahawks right now. I
Yeah.
just like what they're cooking. I just think that they doubled down on their offense with a big trade, bringing in another legit wide receiver to a receiving core that is already doing pretty damn good. And, Sam Darnold continues to look pretty good. I don't know. Their defense is holding up well. Whereas the Cardinals, it's like, I don't want to diss Jacoby Brissett.
Mhm.
But if you're relying on Jacoby Brissett to keep your season afloat, there's probably some issues there. Do you know what I mean? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
credit to Jacoby Brissett. He's just doing his job. But
yeah.
if that's what was needed here, I don't even know what we're doing. So it's less than a touchdown. I'm going to
Yeah.
take that and lay less than the touchdown at 6.5. I'm going to take the Seahawks.
Yeah, I haven't fully sort of decided on this, right? But as we do on like the Wednesday and we make the sort of caveat, like it's Wednesday. Like
Yeah.
we have time to sort of make these decisions. And I even said last week where I was like, yeah, I need to know whether Brissett or Murray are going to play and like
Mhm.
what that market is going to look like. And I talked about the idea of like I write my Monday Night Football preview on Sunday. And like if you're
Mhm.
going to tell me I don't get to know what the quarterback situation is, and I think the quarterback situation matters at least relative to the market, right? So if you told me we were glued in at 2.5 for last week's Monday Night Football game
Mhm.
and Jacoby Brissett was going to play, like I can't definitely tell you that I would have been on the Cardinals, but as that line, as Murray gets ruled out, or remember that there was a day
Yeah.
there where it was like he's going to be on available, but on the sideline, you're like, I
What?
don't really understand what that means, other than the Cardinals like knowing that like Brissett might be better for this offense, particularly against a defense like Dallas. And that's the kind of thing that we need, I think, probably to talk about if we haven't on a weekly basis, the like Dallas Cowboys bump or like the Dallas Cowboys like trickery, where it's like every offense looks like they're cooking, like, and then you have to go like, yeah, but they played Dallas last week. Like, it's just brutal. Like, how often was Marvin Harrison like wide open in that first half? It's like 3rd and 18. Don't worry, Marvin's just gonna run 20 yards. He's gonna run backwards 2 yards and catch a pass that Jacoby Brissett is gonna be able to throw on target. And the sad part is that the Cardinals, I don't think, can necessarily rely on Kyler Murray to just run that basic of an offense. The spectacular play is always available to Kyler Murray, right? Maybe he converts a 3rd and 18 just on his legs alone. But against the Cowboys, that's not what's required. Against the Seahawks, that might be what is required, because the Seahawks defense is nasty. The secondary on that team is nasty, right? Jaden Daniels was scrambling around so much last week, eventually getting injured, but that was more of a direct play or whatever, a design play. He was scrambling around because nobody on that team could get open against the Seattle secondary. And so, listen, we live in a space in like sports betting where like dudes are just will pat themselves on the back over anything, and companies will pat themselves on the back for giving out a -150 on the money line, social media, all of that garbage. Hand up, I was so far off on the Seattle Seahawks from before the season. Big off on that. Like, I thought, again, you look at some of the other teams in the division, and of course, there was some honestly kind of weird optimism with regard to the Cardinals, and you just go like, yeah, this could be the team that kind of falls off. But they've done everything that you've ever sort of asked of them, like improve the offensive line. They're like, yeah, we just need them to get healthy. They're healthy now. Improve the run defense. They have like now the best run defense in the league. And Chris Collinsworth, and again, you can kind of, he's an easy sort of fodder because of the accent and some of that stuff as far as like kind of making fun of him. But if you just shut up and listen to Chris Collinsworth on these Sunday Night Football games, he does a better job than anybody else of telling you like kind of what's going on in like an important way. And one of the things that he sort of said, and it was this kind of throwaway comment, I think I'm doing like a weekly Chris Collinsworth report on this podcast, but he's like, I don't know what we're missing here. I'm not gonna do the accent. I don't know what we're missing here. Like the Seahawks have everything. And like you mentioned with regards to the receiving core, like there was a time in our lives where we were like, well, they traded DK Metcalf or let him go. And now it's Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's a good player, but it's Cooper Kupp, who's kind of on the end of that deal. And then a bunch of guys that we don't really know. And now all of a sudden, those bunch of guys that we don't really know are like Torrey Horton, who's making like multiple touchdown games. And now that you mentioned, like they get Rashid Shaheed, and it's like that dude is a problem with regards to the deep ball, something that Sam Darnold is openly willing to throw. And so whether it's Kupp coming back, or not, it's Kupp, Horton, Shaheed, JSN, and 2 tight ends, by the way, who are really good pass catchers and really good safety valves. And as you mentioned, like they have 2 pretty good running backs. And I think everybody's kind of frustrated that those guys don't do a little bit more, because individually we live in a fantasy football world, right, where you want to be able to rely on, Kenneth Walker to just get 100 yards in every game. But they both do enough, right? And so again, defensively, right, the secondary is incredible, and the run defense is outstanding. And you just go, what is this team supposed to do to get your credit? And again, maybe it's a Sam Darnold thing, but like we just watched that guy blowtorch a bad defense. And so it's going to be trickier because the Cardinals defense is not bad. And you have to give them credit for slowing down the Cowboys and honestly kind of really just stopping the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I'm sort of hesitant, because it is the 6.5. And it's like, you don't want to get too drunk on the idea of the Seahawks having blown out a bad Commanders team. But you also don't want to get too drunk on the idea that like Jacoby Brissett is all of a sudden going to translate, dome game against a bad defense to going to Seattle against a really, really good one. And like, how many points are they going to be able to score, especially if the run game, which the Cardinals is still very much dicey, and that they're not going to be able to rely on that. And so, yeah, it might be a lot of Jacoby Brissett hucking that ball around in Seattle. And like, there's a very decent possibility that that goes extremely poorly for Arizona on a short week with back-to-back road games.
That last point you just made right there.
You're like, you could have saved me 5 minutes of my life and just made the last point.
No. That's, I mean, a lot of times, right? Like some of those little bing, bang, boom. It's like, yep, that's just a cherry on top of feeling okay about said pick. So yeah, Seahawks laying the 6.5. That's where I'm sitting in that one. As we move on to our next game, the aforementioned Commandos are hosting the Detroit Lions. Lions laying 9.5 points on the road. You might be asking yourself, what? Like, that's a lot of points. It's a lot of points.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things at play here. Obviously, injuries last week to the Commandos, which I'm sure you'll want to get to for sure. But I'm on the Lions here, but this mostly comes down to the Lions. Dan Campbell saying he didn't have his team ready last week coming off the bye. He's the rah-rah guy. I get they looked really bad last week, and this is a game going on the road, but this is just a prime bounce back opportunity for the Lions here against a very bad team that is just in a very weird spot. I don't even know what to make of this team right now. Like, their team looks down bad. Jaden's down bad. Dan Quinn's down bad. Like, there's just a lot of stuff going on here.
I hate saying, like, I don't really understand this line, because I preach, like, the idea of, like, if you don't understand the line, you're doing it wrong. But let me just kind of walk you through this, right? Like, next Sunday, speaking of, this is outstanding, and we're going to really enjoy this next week. The international game next week.
Okay.
Washington and Miami.
Wow.
Good.
Sending the best.
Lord, right? And so I don't really understand this line under the context of Washington's favored in that game next week.
Okay.
Is the assumption that Jaden Daniels, with his arm facing the incorrect direction at one point last week, is the assumption that he is supposed to come back for that game? Or
I would assume so. That's the only way that makes sense.
Well, yeah, or especially relative to this line, because let's put it this way, right? The only thing that's really happened here is they got blown out by the Seahawks, who again might be really, really good, and they lost Jaden Daniels, who they played 3 games already without, and yet the rating for the Commanders is below at any other point.
Okay.
Where they've had to start Marcus Mariota, who again is functional backup quarterback. Again, didn't go great against Dallas when he had to come in there. But again, so my point is wait a minute, you're making them a favorite, again, neutral site favorite, 1.5. It's not nuts or whatever. And by the way, Detroit just lost to JJ McCarthy in Minnesota at home.
Yeah.
So this isn't we got to upgrade Detroit. And so I guess my point is if you knock Detroit down, which I think you have to do, and you are knocking them down based on their look ahead line for next week, is I can get to 8.
Okay.
I can get to 8. This is the max I can, that's the best I can do. And so that this line is 9.5 doesn't really reflect an appropriate market rating for either team. And that's fine if you just kind of want to go on vibes, and that
I was just gonna say that,
and that the vibes are going to be so bad that they supersede what the Commanders are sort of capable of, that the market is already weighing in on for next week.
Yeah.
If the vibes are so bad, why isn't it just a pick 'em next week against Miami? Why does Washington have to be favored in the look ahead lines for that game, right? And it's the only answer, the only possible answer is the expectation of Jaden Daniels playing next week. And it's just that sounds crazy. So so that's just kind of what I'm looking at with regards to this game. It's not one I'm well, we have slam a fist on the table and say we have to take the Commanders because they're being underrated, because Marcus Mariota has played a bunch of games already this season. And again, we might have been overrating the Lions up until last week. So that's it. Yeah. I mean, it's
a
not
lot going on there.
Yeah, it's not, there's nothing concrete about it, but I'm just trying to explain the idea that 9.5 on the road is kind of crazy for a team that has been considered a lot better than maybe they are in the Commanders, right? But now is the time to sort of jump complete ship on that. Maybe, again, that's kind of the point, is maybe it is, but it's really just kind of on vibes with this extra 1.5 points to get up to 9.5. And maybe that's straight up teaser protection.
Yeah.
That's worth mentioning, right? Where you go, if you make it -8.5, I mean, listen, I got suckered right into it with the Lions last week, making the Lions -8.5 from a teaser, right? I'm like, let's take it down to 2.5. And it's like, that's great and all, but they're going to lose outright. Ah, ah. Right?
Yep.
So, again, maybe the odds makers are like, listen, we're not doing 2.5 again because like there's no way the Commanders are going to win this game. And yeah, maybe that's the case, but 9.5 is just a bridge too far for me to be like, yeah, let's lay the Lions here on the road.
Are you able to tell me what the vibes are in Washington coming off the last few weeks of what's been going on? Because I feel like if we go back into the time machine here,
No.
there was a little something that someone said that kind of played. How do I phrase this? That kind of played a part in let's go into the time machine here. Can we do that for a second?
Let's do it. Here to sort of designate sort of opinion on some of these coaches off of kind of the tiniest stuff. But I'm watching, it's a 3-touchdown game with 2 minutes to go in that game. And Zach Ertz, 35-year-old tight end, is still out there like running routes, like diving around. And it's just like from a decision-making process type deal, why are you putting that guy through that when you're literally like Laramie Tunsil's out for half the game and McLaurin's like grabbing at his leg and Daniels is injured and you're just like, you are aware injuries happen. You're seeing them on all of your other key players. And it's like, you can tell me that Zach Ertz isn't going to matter to like the point spread or anything like that. And I totally get that. But like Zach Ertz matters to Jaden Daniels when they're inside the 10-yard line, and he always throws it to Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
And like, again, you can tell me that guy's replaceable, but like treating that guy as replaceable, having him out there is just like a microcosm of the overall kind of deal with the Commanders.
Interesting stuff there. Who was that
Weird,
guy? What?
He sounds smart. He sounds like he's got a bit of a crystal ball. That was me last week talking about just I do not trust the Commanders to make correct decisions, and leaving Zach Ertz out there against the Chiefs. Again, part of that I only noticed because I had Zach Ertz under receptions in that game. Again, betting, right? It keeps you locked in to the 3-touchdown game, and it kept me awake watching that game when Jaden Daniels was still out there. And again, you go, what are you doing? Like, and Dan Quinn after he's like, oh, that one's on me. It's like, yeah, you think? It's like the cornerback who gets beat for like the 50-yard touchdown. He's like, puts his hand up, like and taps his chest. My bad. Like, we know it's your bad, man. Like who's bad? Who else is bad would it be? And again, so yeah, like you're making a good point for the Lions here because the vibes are such that like nobody trusts Dan Quinn to sort of make a correct decision. And it's like, well, he should have somebody tell him that. It's like, well, what is his job if at that point, if not to sort of understand that Jaden Daniels cannot be in that game? And so you'll hear different people are going to zig and zag on this and be like, well, I'd want my guy out there. And it's like, sure, fine, if it's a guy who's playing in every game and whatever and isn't a running quarterback and all of that kind of stuff. For that guy who runs in that system, the underline on runs, it was a little too obvious a week beforehand, and it didn't need to be so prescient. But yeah, you make a good point off of my own point that maybe we should be on the Lions in this game because the vibes might be an all-time low. Not an all-time low for the Commanders. Let's be honest, the Commanders a low for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, so, definitely a low for the Jane Daniels, Dan Quinn era. We'll say. Yeah. I'm laying the points with the Lions here on the road. We'll see how that goes. Apparently I like laying 9.5 points on the road because here we are again with our next game. The Buffalo Bills are 9.5 point favorites on the road in Miami. Bills came out ready last week against the Chiefs. They covered as home dogs. They won as home dogs. And now, that's a huge rating, shooting up 9.5 points. This is another game where I'll be honest, I was on the Dolphins plus 9.5, and then I switched it while I was sitting here staring at the picks. The real reason here why I'm switching the pick was because the Dolphins, I can't believe that Mike McDaniel still has a job. Like for real? Like it's kind of strange to me, and I
Right.
understand it. Like you get rid of the GM, you trust this guy for whatever reason, you think he's a good coach. Cool, whatever. But overall, the only thing that makes me afraid of this 9.5 points on the road, right? And like the Bills just like stomping them. It's not
Yeah.
even the last game that these two teams played. It's just the fact of the potential letdown after obviously another big win against the Chiefs. That's the only
Yeah.
thing that has me kind of nervous about laying the 9.5 points. Because other than that, I'm just like the Dolphins just suck and whatever.
Yeah. You know what this is going to lead me to for when I write about this game, whatever I write about it, as far
Mm-hmm.
as not being sure about what I want to do beyond that. This game had been circled for me from like a survivor perspective for a really long time,
Yep.
so I didn't really think I was going to come to the fact where I'd have to make a not have to, you never have to, but
I know
like
what
I'd
you're
be
saying.
compelled to make a bet beyond just like Bills win and let's keep our fingers crossed. Um, it's how the Bills are 5-0 against the Chiefs in the regular season, right? Every year
Mm-hmm.
for the last 5 years. We're gonna have to look back at the very least to see how they perform in the very next day or in the very next week,
True.
right? Like
Good call.
it's a nice scenario where it's happened so many times that if we're going off of I hate to use it again, but vibes, off of feel, off of let down, then let's see if like they have in fact let down in the weeks after beating the Chiefs, right? So we're gonna take a look at that over the course of the next few days. Um, I mentioned the idea of like, well, the Dolphins moving the ball against the Ravens. And, just a quick comment on that, like firing of the general manager. Like, I looked at that and I was like, yeah, that sounds right. And it has nothing to do with whether or not Mike McDaniel should be fired or not. But my issue the whole time when people were looking to fire Mike McDaniel, like in week 2, was is he the one who's been giving such garbage talent in the defensive secondary or
Yeah.
the offensive line, right? Like, that's not what his
Valid.
job is. Now, again, we can like or dislike a bunch of stuff when it comes to what like Mike McDaniel's doing there as far as like leader of men and yada yada
Speaking
yada.
of
But like,
vibes.
right, but like when they made the playoffs twice,
Yeah.
nobody was really complaining about like his ability to quote unquote lead men. And so what we're really complaining about is he not able to make chicken salad out of chicken bleep. And the problem is like he's been given the chicken bleep by the general manager who like went all in 5 years ago to give him the good players. And like this is the stuff that you got to pay for, right? And so if he was a better general manager like the guy over in LA,
Mm-hmm.
then they would have better players because LA was supposed to like hit the tank after winning the Super Bowl. And like they haven't because the general manager and the management and scouting and all of that sort of thing
Mm-hmm.
was able to grab the Puka Nakuas of the world and the defensive line that they pieced together without having a draft pick for like an entire presidential, uh,
Term.
administration term. Thank you. And so I just go like, yeah, of course that guy should have been fired. He should have been fired long ago. Now, the answer to is Mike McDaniel, should he be fired? Yada yada. The answer to all your questions is money. And the reality is they're just going to let him play out this season and they're going to fire him at the end of the season. And therefore they don't have to spend whatever the amount is to bump up a guy interim coach, right? You hire the special teams coordinator to be the interim head coach for half a season. You're going to throw him $500,000. Like that's just what people do. And so like if you're the owner, you're like, why would I do that? Like we're not going anywhere this season. Tyreek Hill's hurt. Again, the general manager didn't stock the cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
So let's boot him because I've had enough of that. And then we're just going to wait to the end of the season to fire Mike McDaniel. We're going to save ourselves $500,000, $1,000,000, whatever the going rate on an interim coach is. And somebody might weigh in and be like, it's actually $2 or $3 million. I'd be like, yeah, probably. So, I just go, yeah, it's just that's what's happening here. They are playing out this about the schedule here, but they've been playing out the schedule or had been within turmoil basically all season long. And so this we can go back to this game that they played against the Bills, the first time around, where that line was, you'll recall, like 12-13, and we're like, that's too high. It should probably be 10. We kind of have to have that same attitude here, where if we thought it should be 10-10.5 in Buffalo, we should probably think that it should be 8 here in Miami. Now, again, they go and they make a couple of trades here to take some of the sort of even more of the talent away. But yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it's going to come down to like, are the Bills ready to like rock and roll and hammer this Dolphins team, who again, outside of just not being able to get the ball in the end zone when they got to the red zone last week, again, did move pretty effectively on offense and probably
Mhm.
can do the same thing against the Bills this week. But again, the Bills might hang 40 on them, and I wouldn't be remotely surprised either.
Yeah, it's definitely going to see how the Dolphins come out this week, but most importantly, how the Bills show up this week for sure. Because there is a spot where it could be a letdown, or it could be a spot where they realize, oh wait, we're in a divisional battle here with New England. We kind of got to keep pace here with New
Yeah.
England, who having a better season than they might have thought of before the year, right? So that might
Mhm.
motivate the Bills to keep it moving here and keep piling on wins and not get surprised, or leave room for the Dolphins to do some bleepery, we'll say.
Mhm.
Our next game, though, we have the New York Giants heading to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears, who came off an interesting win last week. Bears laying 3.5 points now at home. And in part, just an absolutely insane game between the Bears and Bengals last week. But if we focus on the Bears here, Ben Johnson had Caleb throwing, he had
Oh,
Caleb running, he had Caleb
yeah.
catching passes, and they needed all of it for them
Yeah.
to win
Yeah.
against a terrible deep Bengals defense. And I look at this one because their defense is also pretty bad. And that makes me kind of like, it had me sort of looking at taking the Giants, but then I'm like, not on the road. Just not. I can't do this here with the Giants on the road. I don't even know if the Giants have enough, talent. I mean, they didn't look to have
Dudes.
enough
Yeah.
guys last week against a beat up Niners team. And I know the
Yeah.
Niners aren't the Bears, but my point is they're just a banged up team. The Giants are. Um, I don't know. I don't know. This is a weird one because obviously I don't like laying 3.5 points with Caleb and the Bears
Right.
anywhere against
Sure.
anyone, right?
But you don't want to get in the limo.
Yeah, not with the Giants.
Giants.
Nah,
Giants to the limo.
this whole Dable, nah, nah, can't do it. Can't do it.
Unless you have a very specific fetish, getting into the limo to the strip club with the Giants is probably not something you want to do. I always so last week I don't understand the NFL. I don't understand teams. I don't understand coaches. I don't understand any of it because why you would dust off the plays that the Bears were dusting off for the Bengals defense, and maybe because it was the Bengals defense, because it's like, yeah, we can try this stuff. We make everybody feel great
Yeah,
about like what
get
we're
the
doing
vibes high.
here.
Come on, the
Yeah, like this is
vibes.
a vibes day, and then of course they almost blow the vibes entirely with the Bears defense getting like flaccoed right in the face. Uh, put it this way, so like whether it's the fun plays or the general offense, we have to look at the Bears as like V1 Detroit Lions, right? Like early stage Detroit Lions offense with Ben Johnson, right? He's like, yeah, he wants to do fun plays, but he wants to have two running backs just like running the football. And if one of those guys is out, right? Like anytime David Montgomery or Jameer Gibbs, not like you wouldn't necessarily, he's certainly not going to not play Jameer Gibbs in like fantasy football. But like, if any one of those guys is just the only running back or like the main running back, it's like clear the deck here. Like this is about to get like wild for whoever owns either of those players on their fantasy team and also in the prop market. And so when like DeAndre Swift goes out, it's like, here comes Kyle Minogue guy. And it's like, it's happening. And then he just like lights it up. And I was on the 49ers last week. I was on Christian McCaffrey in the prop market last week because the Giants run defense is bad. And so when I look at this game, I go like, it's kind of another opportunity for Ben Johnson to get like the running game going, and whether that's a Swift Monangai combination or whether that's just Monangai again this week. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident the Bears are going to be able to run the football against the Giants. Same way against the Bengals. Against really good run teams, maybe we're not there yet because we're not at version 2 of the Ben Johnson
Mhm.
offense, right? And so yeah, as long as they don't have the scary part in all of this is like if they throw the ball too much and Caleb Williams is running around against that defensive line, then they're going to be in big trouble. But you can just walk around every game and say, I like the Giants here because of the defensive line. Like, I'm sorry, we're at a point in society where we need more information on why you're backing the Giants other than the defensive line, because you just do that all the time. And so if you're Ben Johnson and you're really fine with running the football the way that you have been, then you can just kind of rely on that. And you can give, if you're the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey 28, 29 carries. And hopefully, again, whether it's Swift, Monangai, or just Monangai, 30 carries for those guys. And so that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the Bears here, because I just go, first things first, the Giants, the only way the Giants can kind of stay in some of these games is if they are going up against a team that is either unwilling to or unable to run the football. And the Bears are able and willing to run the football. So like that's the part that's kind of I'm certainly not looking to get into the limo with the Giants here because of that reason. We'll say that. And then offensively for the Giants, something we said last week where, first it's Neighbors, then it's Scatterboo, and eventually you're just like, we just ran out of dudes. We ran out of difference-making type dudes, and you're going to need that on the road against Chicago. Even if we don't necessarily like the Chicago Bears defense, which, again, like Joe Flacco will take advantage of a bad defense. I'm not positive just yet that Jackson Dart is capable of doing so.
Yeah, he's not there yet. It's too much to rely on in terms of Jackson Dart at this point, despite the fact that Dable is desperately trying to save his job, but who knows? Our next game, we got the Saints at the Panthers. Panthers at home and laying 5.5 points. That is, I don't know how many times I've said that over the last however many years of doing this pod.
Record scratch.
Do we need Cam Newton? Did Cam Newton's music need to be here? I don't even know. Were we doing the pod when Cam Newton was still?
No, not right? When he was good.
Like, this is what I'm saying. Like,
we were doing the podcast, but it was in like Edit Suite 3 or 2. I don't even remember. That's how long it's been.
Yes,
at a certain sports network. Yeah,
definitely.
Without microphones.
But the Panthers are favored by 5.5 points here because they're coming off a massive win as massive underdogs in Lambeau. And I got to say, we were on the dogs in the Panthers last week in Lambeau. And they won outright, which is just crazy. But the point remains, and it's things that we've been saying for weeks and weeks. Their defense is solid. They got a solid defense. And Rico Dowdle is putting in work. And that to me alone is enough to beat the Saints because I don't know what the Saints have. The Tyler Shuck era or whatever his name is not going well. And he's apparently not the answer over my guy Spence.
Yeah.
But I think they knew that. I'm just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Either way, 5.5 points. I could never think that I'm laying 5.5 points with the Panthers here. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Why don't you just not? Why don't you just not do that then?
Because it's the Saints. Because it's the Saints.
I think to myself, would an idiot do that? And if he would do that, I would not do that. This is a courtesy of my guy Ben Fox over at Yahoo Sports. Okay. The Panthers have been in this role, favored by kind of this much in this range, like 10 times over the last X amount of years. I forget the exact number. Okay. Quick guess, Shell. How many times have they covered? How many times have they covered out of 10?
Out of 10?
Yeah.
Oof. I'm going to go with 2.
0 times, Shell. 0 times. They're 0 and 10. 0 and 10.
So why not now? That's what I say.
Yeah. Now we've hit the Arrested Development, right? Like it's never worked for them, but it might work for us. So again, and those trends are at least sort of interesting because it's like the Panthers have always kind of been like this, at least in modern times, since the Cam Newton era, if you will. And every time something happened, whether it was them playing a little bit better or the team that they're playing coming in being like god awful, and something happened to make the ratings, the math, right, work to the point where the Panthers were going to be favored by this much. And every time it went really badly. And so I was on the Panthers money line last week. So again, that's not a brag per se, kind of is. No. But it's a preface to say that I have to a degree faith in the macro Panthers industrial complex, right? I believe that they can stay in games. And again, they're against the spread record since the benching return of Bryce Young is incredibly good. They are 70% or even higher than I think now since they brought him back last season. Obviously, taking out the Andy Dalton game from 2 weeks ago. Just when Bryce Young plays since that benching from last year, they're 70% against the spread. But in most of those instances, almost all of those instances,
Yeah.
it was, can you just stay inside of a number against a better team, whether it's Chiefs at home or Packers on the road, and yada, yada, yada. Eye test perspective.
Yeah.
Again, preface, I got Rico Dowdle on the fantasy team. I'm pumped every time he does stuff. They run the same play over and over and over again, and it just somehow works to like 5 yards, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, that's cool. Like, we can work with that. And it's literally just kind of the toss, like straight up the middle. There's a crack here, and there's a whatever, and a pull here, and it just like works just enough. And it's amazing because it's like, there's no other like guaranteed successful play on the sheet. And they're just like, we're just gonna keep running it. We're just gonna keep running it. And we're gonna do what we do here. And no other team has been, I think, as successful, this is a made up stat, on against the point spread for a team that every time you watch them, you go, man, this quarterback sucks. Bryce Young, like when I watch Bryce Young multiple times a game, I just go, this guy sucks. And I hate, I hate to like paint it with that brush, but like
Yeah.
I do. And he's doing dumb stuff too, where he's like, he's running out of bounds and he slows up and he gets drilled by the Packers linebacker and they throw the flag and then somebody calls in and goes, yeah, he wasn't out of bounds. And they go, like, we're picking the flag up. And it's like, you just run out, and he does it again later on. And you're like, dude, just run out of bounds. Like, what are you trying to pull here? And like, maybe the move to make is he's trying to get an extra 15 yards and he's willing to get drilled by it, but it's like that still seems like a desperation move.
Yeah.
So again, my point to all of this is like, I just watched this dude and I'm like, I hate it. Worked out, but I'm like, I hate watching you, needing you to do stuff, and it keeps working out. Like, I felt the same way early on against the Dolphins. They come back and they win that game, right? Again, more times where they win the game, but I still go like, yeah, the quarterback sucks. And normally I try to paint it with a little nicer picture, but like that's just how in the moment that I feel. I am literally quoting myself in this instance. And so now you're asking me to have that experience watching that quarterback and go, you want to lay 5.5 points with that guy? And so like that me who says that he sucks and this me who is being asked that question, they should be the same me. Because it's me. So I should say no to that question. So I'm going to say no to that question. And so then you have to go like, all right, well, why are you selling yourself on the Saints? We did the whole dance about how the Saints are actually better than people think. And like, da, 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 da. And yeah, the metrics don't look necessarily good. And they run Tyler Shuck out there against the Rams on the road. We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
You'll recall we weren't, running over women and children to get 14 points with the Saints last week because we're like, this is a brutal situation for this guy to go out there in. And honestly, I watched a lot of that game because there was only 3 games on at the time. I got more than enough screens, and I'm like, he's actually not that bad. Like he's like, ripping balls in there and like, listen, the Shaheed trade and they've traded Trevor Penning and like, I don't know how good Trevor Penning necessarily is, but like, they're clearly in sell mode. And I think that has something to do with the rating is literally in the Titan zone. You've heard of the Tyson zone from Bill Simmons. This is the Titan zone, which is like below the level that we ever thought sort of possible, which by the way, is what has to happen to make the Panthers a 5.5 point favorite in any game, right? Like you have to be rated like that. And so I just go, I don't think the Saints are good, but again, I think the one quarterback sucks. And then I think this one maybe isn't so bad and is at least willing to like step in there and fire at different receivers. And so the fact that the Panthers kind of have only one play and it's a run play right up the middle and the Saints are pretty good against the run, like where they fall apart is against the pass. And it's like, who's really good at the pass? Matthew Stafford's really good at the pass. So like I wasn't going to be surprised when he's hitting dudes like downfield all game long, which is how the Rams were scoring in that game. And it's like, you think Bryce Young's gonna do that? And if you do, like lay the 5.5, that's cool. But like me from 4 days ago, who says this guy sucks, is not going to do that. So I got to listen to me from a few days ago and go like, he's not going to do a Matthew Stafford impression here. And so, yeah, I can think that the Saints aren't very good and like the sell and the vibes and all that kind of stuff. But like, no, like I still think, this is the NFL, man. Like the guys who are out there are playing for a job. They are theoretically playing for this quarterback who is theoretically the quarterback of the future. He's a 2nd round pick. right?
Yeah.
This isn't some sixth rounder that they just found off the street. It's a guy they have an investment in. Give Kellen Moore, an offensive coordinator, who in theory is supposed to put him in decent positions to succeed, and against a Panthers defense that gave up 40 a week before winning that game against the Packers, who nobody wanted anything to do with against the Packers last week, except for me. I wanted something to do with them. So again, like, I'm only saying that to sort of understand that, like, I'm not averse to betting on the Panthers or think that the Panthers are way worse than they are. I just don't want anything to do with laying 5.5 with them. And I think the Saints can keep this game close. And frankly, I'll probably put them in the round robin underdog money line parlay, because the Panthers are 0-10 in this situation on the rare occasions where they have been put in such a situation.
I got you. Almost had me. This is going to be one where next week I come on the pod and I say, listen, I sat down, the game came up on Red Zone, and all of a sudden, some dude in a Saints jersey was just running down the sidelines free and into the end zone. But hey, that's what makes the show fun. That's what makes the pod good. I'm laying the 5.5 points.
Oh my God.
With the Panthers.
Sunday me is disgusted right now. Wednesday me is like, I'm not pumped about it, but Sunday me is like, you fool.
Oh, it's gonna be so good. I can't wait. Something I can wait for is this Browns Jets game.
Yeah.
Browns and Jets, both teams coming off a bye, which was probably where both teams deserve to stay, if we're being honest. But the Browns are 2.5 point road favorites, and this is another one I switched. I think I was on the Jets plus 2.5, and then I switched it to the Browns. And the only reason I did that was because I feel like the Browns are just some more, like, of the two bad teams, the Browns are just the better bad team, if that makes sense. The Browns at least have a unit in their defense that I can say, yeah, I trust that unit the most of any other unit involved in this game.
Right.
And the Jets, I mean, even coming off the bye, I don't even know what that means for them, right? Like, you're trading away your defensive players, they're good defensive players that you did have. Like, what does that do for the rest of the morale? Does that boost the rest of the team being like, all right, now it's my time to shine? The other guy stepping in. You know, I heard someone on one of the talking head networks talking about Aaron Glenn, and clearly maybe, you know, Sauce and Quentin Williams weren't Aaron Glenn guys. Like, who are Aaron Glenn guys? This team sucks,
the good players,
right? Yeah. So it's like, what does that mean that your two good, like, top draft picks are not Aaron Glenn guys? All right, like, what is, like, this isn't Phil Jackson coming to a team and it's like, you know what, maybe we got to get rid of this guy. He's just not a Phil Jackson guy, and maybe that's a bad example considering Phil Jackson's resume. But I'm saying, at least in that world, I can understand what
Aaron Glenn's handing out Zen books to people. Like,
but you know what I mean? At least I can, like, understand where we're coming from here. Like, Aaron Glenn, I don't know. His highlight of the year is dancing down the sidelines moments before they blew a game against Tampa, right? So I don't know. Poor Aaron Glenn. I want you to succeed, Aaron Glenn, but I just haven't seen it yet. And for that reason, I can't even take you as home dogs against the Browns. And I want to do that. I do. But I just can't. I trust the Browns running game, and I trust the Browns defense.
Yeah. What's the thing where it's like the players, like, you know, player X has got this, you know, dash player X, like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, he's saying that he's got this. How is, as this is going to be good. Azarihi Thomas, Azarihi Thomas, Brandon Stevens, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. all sound made up, or not even like a name. In one case, the way I butchered Azarihi. That's the Jets secondary at this point. That's the Jets cornerbacks. That's their depth. That's their depth chart. So those are, you know, Azarihi Thomas is sitting here going like, Azarihi Thomas has this dash Azarihi Thomas. So that's rough. Obviously the Jets come off their bye week, having just pulled off the miracle victory against the Bengals, coming back where Aaron Glenn shows me that he knows how to do the down 14, the down 8 rule, right?
Yep.
Where you go for the 2-point conversion. I'm like, oh my God, Aaron Glenn knows how to work this thing. It literally sets forth that if anybody else doesn't know to do this, college or pro, that like the level of shame has increased like tenfold, where it's like, dog, Aaron Glenn knew how to do this and you haven't figured this out. Like, you gotta go. And I don't even know who I'm talking to just yet here, but we're gonna see somebody else not do it. And I'm gonna think that they're worse than Aaron Glenn, which is like a super tough scene. The one thing here, so obviously, like from a rating perspective, it's like, wait a minute, the Browns are favored on the road. Like, how is that certainly possible? Obviously, people are not psyched about the Jets selling off Quinn Williams. Thought they've got a really good deal. That's hilarious, by the way, that Dallas did that. So now the market is, despite the fact that the Jets won a game, like cratering on the Jets, right? They are down just ahead of the Saints and the Titans in the market ratings. And they just won a road game where like Justin Fields looked like palatable as a quarterback. So like, again, my point is that adjustment is being made because of those trades. Sauce Gardner wasn't even playing for the Jets.
Yeah.
He hasn't played in weeks. So what's the downgrade there other than just fine? Right, Michael Carter, like, sure, like that's, that's fine. Like, I just tried to read out the names of the cornerbacks. Like, that's not great. What do we always sort of say when it comes to like these either like hold on a team or like roster issues or whatever? It's, can the other team take advantage? Dylan Gabriel going to be able to take advantage of this empty secondary? Right? Quinshon Judkins right now is still questionable.
Yeah.
He got banged up in that game a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Their last game. So what if Quinshon Judkins doesn't play? Like, it's a pretty significant The best thing maybe that you can say about the Browns season so far is that they found maybe a top 5 running back in the entire league.
Yeah.
Well, if he goes away, now it's all of a sudden Jerome Ford SZN, Dylan Sampson SZN, like, not. So again, can you take advantage of Quinnen Williams not being there if those dudes are your running backs? And I'm supposed to lay 2.5 on the road with the Browns here. Like, this could be like the grimmest of all the games. And like, yeah, just quickly check the total to make sure it's not like 7. But like, 37.5. I like, are the Jets going to get to 20? Are the Browns going to get to 20?
Yeah.
I know 37.5 is a low number, but we've seen lower.
It's true.
We've seen lower.
This is true.
So, and again, like, you can easily do the 2.5 thing and be like, Jets tease them up to 8.5. I don't know. This game could be 10-0. Like,
sure.
Right? I'm like, anytime I say, invoke a teaser leg, right? Which are going horrendously this year. I just think, like, can you trust this team? And so whether, usually these are off 2.5 or down to 2.5.
Yeah.
So it's like, can you trust Detroit to beat JJ McCarthy at home at -2.5? I'm like, I feel like I can trust that.
Yeah.
Now, whether they do or don't, like I said, they've been going horribly.
Different
so
story.
the answer, they don't. Right. And so it's like, can you trust the Jets to not lose by 8.5? Well, no, not really. But can I trust either of these teams to score 20 points?
This is, this is definitely the game where it's just like, you could tell me any outcome and I'd be like, okay, cool.
I agree with you, but I don't think any outcome includes like either team scoring like 30 points.
No.
You know what I mean? If you're like, well, once they scored 30-3, and it's like, I get it. It's
It'd
like,
be all
I still
bleepery.
don't get it. Yeah, it would be all bleep. Yeah. And honestly, that 37.5 leaves you open to getting bleeped by like fumbles and turnover nonsense or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I get that.
But still,
listen, the Jets never turn anybody over. So like, let's start there. And, again, if Justin Fields and Breece Hall are just kind of like taking turns running the football or, running plays for essentially each other, maybe the Jets don't turn the ball over against the Browns. So, again, I don't know. I just don't know how anybody scores in this game.
Yeah. Super tough one there. A super weird one, but it also sets the stage for a weird Sunday nighter. Because I don't really know what to make of said Sunday nighter, is we have the Pittsburgh Steelers Heading to LA to take on the Chargers. Chargers laying 3 points at home. I'm starting here with the Steelers at +3, and I'm going to say I don't like it. But the Steelers last week had a funeral for their defense in the parking lot. Were you aware of this?
No, this
The
is the first I've
fans,
heard of it. What
Steelers
is? Oh, the
fans
fans did. Okay,
had a
so
funeral.
Mike Tomlin
Sorry.
was out
No,
there
no.
giving last rites.
Mike Tomlin was giving his rah-rah speech in the locker room, which I
Of
guess
course.
something worked, as 6 takeaways against the NFL's top offense last week. Classic Steelers home dog performance.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, for the Chargers, they won. They looked pretty good when Joe Alt was in, and then he got hurt again. I mean, I don't know what to make of the Chargers at this point. Laying the 3 points here, I think they are the better team, even with the injuries against the Steelers.
Mhm.
But 3 points is a lot, and it's tough. And this is blatantly one where they gave me the 3 points, and I'm the sucker that's sitting here. Like, it's the 3. I've been dreaming of getting 3 points for so long. And that's really what has me leaning here. But my logic tells me the Chargers are just better.
Yeah.
A better fit operation.
Yeah. Between the 3 and the 3.5s this week, like, you are just in your hay, man. Like, you've
All
been
over the
dying for field goal spreads all year. You're like,
Yeah.
these 2.5s are garbage.
No.
Okay. So fundamentally, the Chargers rating going into last week, and they do the like win but don't cover thing. The
Yep.
Titans had 200 yards. Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
else? You know what I mean? That
Weird
was just
game.
kind of, yeah. I mean, the Titans get a punt return touchdown from my guy Chimere DK. That's just going to happen when you're laying 9.5, right?
Yeah.
The market got as high as 10 in that game. And of course, the Chargers had a 10-point lead, and then the Titans get like that backdoor field goal type deal in the fourth quarter. And so, I don't think the market's going to downgrade the Chargers all that much, and it doesn't seem like they have. I had the Chargers, from a personal rating perspective, I have them better than the 59 that they were rated going into last week, because Joe Alt is playing, and that means that much more from a protection standpoint for Justin Herbert. I will also say that when Joe Alt is out, I don't think that they should be a 58 or 59. I think that they should be lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, it's a little bit scary with Pittsburgh's like alleged pass rush being able to kind of come to town here and be able to take advantage of the Chargers offensive line. And so from a rating perspective, if I'm going to drop the Chargers down, then getting +3 here is going to be attractive on the Steelers. That being said, like, the Chargers don't really turn the ball over. Like, that's kind of been the thing that Jim Harbaugh, if nothing else, has said to and instilled in Herbert, where it was really weird last year in the playoffs when he had like whatever it was, 3 or 4 interceptions, because he had like 2 all season long. And he got away with one maybe against Minnesota, and he threw a weird one on the first drive of the game against the Titans. And so, yeah, like, maybe the turnover thing is kind of bubbling a little bit, but I think that there's enough offensive skill position player potential there for the Chargers to be able to take advantage at home against the Steelers defense that, again, a week earlier when we were waiting for them to get a turnover against the Packers, it doesn't seem all that crazy to think that the Steelers could hold a 9-point halftime lead, given that we watched the Packers lose to the Panthers the very next week, and that them turning the ball over against the Colts last week happened for their side. It's like, this is the stuff with the NFL, right? Like, if it doesn't happen one week, it's probably going to happen the next week. You just kind of have to time this stuff correctly. And so if this game had happened last week, and I'm not talking with, in the construct of like the look-ahead line, the look-ahead line was 3.5. It would be really easy to say that the Chargers should be the pick here, because the Steelers defense has looked bad for much of the season and has only really won games when they've turned the other team over like 5 times, which they've done a couple of times. They did it at New England.
Yeah.
Right. And so they do it at New England, and they do it against the Colts. And so it's like, well, all right, man, we're going to need the Steelers here to turn the Chargers over, 3 times here? For I think this to be sort of a viable bet on the Steelers. And again, if it was some other team that maybe turns it over a little more, even if it was the LA Rams, who Stafford is sort of prone to maybe, a fumble or an interception more than even Justin Herbert is, then I would be more into the idea of the Steelers here. And so, I think it's probably going to end up being the Chargers for me here. maybe again the market kind of gets a little sour on this and the number comes off of 3. So I'm kind of hoping that that happens. But we'll see. And so, again, if you can't turn the Chargers over here, then I think that the Steelers are going to be in big trouble because the Chargers have the offensive weapons with, again, the emergence of Ronald Gadsden and the 3 receivers that we reference all the time. And even Kamani Vidal, run the ball pretty well. Yeah, I just think that like the Steelers offense doesn't quite have enough to be able to like kind of take advantage of the Chargers defense, which has kind of been like a little bit sketchy
Yeah.
over the course of this season. Of course, they've made some trades. We referenced the trade with Baltimore, and there's a trade. They got a player back, in that deal as well. So again, I think the Chargers defense getting better, right? The last 2 weeks, and even in the non-cover against the Titans, pretty dominant performance against the Titans, pretty dominant performance against the Vikings who might have been one quarterback away from being a little bit better, who knows. But yeah, I think the Chargers are probably the right side in this game, even without Joe Alt. I think that's going to sting them eventually, just maybe not necessarily this week.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but they made a move to get someone to play.
Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning
right?
from the Saints. Yeah. And so part of that is I'm going to have to kind of dig in to see like how well was he even really playing? Because I know there had been some complaints, like, listen, he was a first round pick. And so if you're willing to trade a first round pick that, on the offensive line, you maybe have had a sort of disappointing run here. And I know like early in his rookie season or sort of throughout his rookie season, people weren't like all that thrilled with how he had been playing. So yeah, we're going to take a look at that over the next couple of days to see if like how well that's going to necessarily be with regards to a fit for the Chargers as well.
That was a go.
Switch.
That was a switch. That was a switch. That was a switch. Yeah. No, the Chargers at home. This is one where I'm more so locked into the fact that to put up points, Aaron Rodgers has not really been that dude now for a bunch of years, but especially with the Steelers, their offense just hasn't looked that good at times at all. And if this game is in the balance coming down the stretch and you're relying on one side versus the other to cover for you, I don't want that side to be Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. So that's basically, where we're heading on that pick. But as we wrap up week 10 action, we do so on Monday Night Football. And for the record there, the switch was made Chargers -3, just clarifying people listening at home.
Yeah.
But as we close on Monday Night Football, we have the Eagles. This is a pretty big matchup. Eagles at the Packers. Packers at home and laying 2.5 points. What's going on with the Packers? They've had some very strange games this season and are wildly inconsistent. I just don't know fully what to make of the Packers. Meanwhile, we got the Eagles coming off their bye, and you're telling me I can get 2.5 points with said Eagles coming off their bye. That's going to be very, very, very enticing for me here. The Packers, the Eagles have had a weird season as well, definitely, right? Sure. And you never know what you're getting from them from half to half. But I still got to say, if we're talking about proven track records here, it's more so what we've been told about the Packers, more so than what I've ever actually seen from the Packers, if that makes sense. Where at least like the Eagles, and especially coming off a bye, I would like to assume that if we're going to get a buttoned up version of the Eagles, it's going to be a Monday Night Football in Lambeau Field coming off a bye with the world watching. Hey, let's figure some stuff out. We're coming with our A++++ game. Give me the Eagles plus the 2.5 points.
Yeah. Again, it's Monday. It's a Monday game. It's Wednesday.
Lots of stuff to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at the Packers, for instance, right, like they get a downgrade because they lost to the Panthers. Like no bleep, right? Like, of course they do. So on the surface, okay, like maybe there's some value on the Packers to quote unquote bounce back. And then also we've talked about the Eagles, right? And we're just trying to figure out like, are the Eagles even good? And everybody's been trying to figure that out, right? And so these two teams, given the point spread, are in this little like section, the non-Chiefs section, where it's everybody's scrambling to be the number 2 team. And obviously being the number 2 team in the NFC, It's a little more important than being the number 2 team in the AFC, because at least it theoretically means that you are the favorite to go to the Super Bowl from that side. And this is a really fun game for all of those reasons.
Mhm.
And you can tell me about the Packers, obviously, and like what we've seen and not seen. Like, man, I totally, like, that hit me, man. I was like, dude, I get it. Like, that is exactly what we should be fading. Because before you had sort of said that, I was going to reference, like, the Tucker Kraft injury,
Yeah.
and even like Matthew Golden potentially being out. But like
Mhm.
the cool thing about the Packers is that they seem to have an assembly line to fill some of these spots, right? So when drafting Matthew Golden seemed like, with the Packers need another receiver, like Dontavian Wicks is out here making touchdown catches sometimes, right? Like, he's like the fifth guy, and you're going to add to that group. And of course, they get Christian Watson back, and it's like, yeah, like, we got too many receivers at this point. And even Tucker Kraft exists as part of a duo that was drafted in the same draft. And at the time, Tucker Kraft wasn't even supposed to be the better one.
Yeah.
Luke Musgrave was supposed to be the better one, right? He was the one drafted higher. And so, and they also have this, another guy that's been playing a little bit as well. And so it's like, yeah, Tucker Kraft is out. But one, like, when are we ever going to make a massive adjustment because of a tight end being injured? And two, you literally have almost a carbon copy of the guy. Again, that's probably being dismissive of my guy Tucker Kraft, but like, again, like, it's a pretty decent replacement. And
Mhm.
so I was going to sort of say, like, yeah, it's kind of a nice spot here. But then you flip over to the Eagles side, right? And you talked about them coming off of the bye. And I've already talked about the idea of, like, all it takes is one bye week to get a guy back sort of like fully healthy and like impactful again. And so AJ Brown misses the game before we come into this bye, and it doesn't hurt them against the Giants. And I think they kind of knew that if everybody was locked in, they were going to be able to beat that Giants team. But if he's back and sort of healthy, and like, Barkley sort of left that game early, but even after the game, he was like, no, I'm fine. We were just in a pretty good spot. But, so they're going to be sort of at their healthiest from an offensive perspective, potentially. We'll see about Cam Jurgens as well. But the defense, we've talked about, like, being like, yeah, this Eagles defense, there's just too many holes. And especially if, like, a Jalen Carter misses a game, and who knows on a week to week basis whether he might do that. But the secondary was the thing, right? But like, what happens when Howie Roseman gets a bye week?
Yeah.
Howie Roseman gets to work. And so he goes and he gets Michael Carter from the Jets to be in that secondary. And listen, I don't think Jair Alexander's got much left, but I know he's got more than Kaylee Ringo. And so that's an addition to that Eagles secondary. And so
Yeah.
that's a really interesting matchup, whether it's a Dory Jackson, Jair Alexander, Michael Carter, Cooper DeJean, and we haven't even gotten to Quinyon Mitchell. That's a more, like, palatable secondary for the Eagles against this armada of receivers and tight ends that the assembly line Packers are just cranking out at this point. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the more I sort of think about it, going like, yeah, if the Eagles exist in a way that we think the Eagles should exist, it's Roseman just filling in the blanks, which it seems like he's doing. And it's them, again, with the bye week happening right in the middle of the season, kind of at a perfect time for the Eagles to be like, all right, enough silliness, even though they're 6-2, despite all the silliness.
Mhm.
Like, let's batten down the hatches for Green Bay, Detroit, and Dallas over these next 3 weeks. We got the two teams we're competing with for a conceptual number one seed in this conference, and our arch rivals road game that will probably go and just absolutely beat the brakes off of because they can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And then, like, we'll see where we're at 9-2 if we could win those 3 games. And so the more I start to talk about it in that sort of sense, the more I go, yeah, like, maybe just grabbing 2 points here, because it's not like, I'm sorry, it's not like the Lambeau Field needs to be rated from a home field advantage perspective any higher than any other place, because you don't lose to the Carolina Panthers if that's the case, right? And we've sort
Very
of
true.
poked holes in the Packers road games and being like, why aren't you doing more here? And again, we're probably one turnover on a Jordan Love floaty ball against the Steelers away from that game script being a lot different in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so again, like you mentioned, and that's why I'm saying I'm definitely giving you credit here, because I'm looking at it going like, God, he's right. Like, what's the game where I'm supposed to point to and be like, the Packers showed up for that game outside of the week one game against the Detroit Lions? It's like, yeah, they handled Washington the next week.
Mhm.
Neat.
Cool.
And then it's a lot of Cincinnati almost losing to Arizona, being down 9 at Pittsburgh, tying Dallas, losing, dropping a 10-0 lead to Cleveland. What's like you said, like what am I supposed to hang my hat on here outside of a good half or, yeah. Anyway,
It's just been a
so
weird season.
I think you might be right. I think you might be right.
It's just a weird season here for sure for the Green Bay Packers so far. And yeah, this is just a big boy matchup in terms of what you said, jockeying for position atop the NFC. This will have huge implications. And I just think the Eagles coming off a bye week just puts them in a much better position to just be ready for that type of matchup. But as you mentioned, it's Wednesday as we're recording this.
Yeah.
Not sure what day it is when people are listening to this, but either way, we appreciate that. But know that in between that time of now and then, there's much more information for you to consume from Mr. Matt Russell. So where can the people find said information?
Yeah, The Window, sports betting with Matt Russell over at the Substack. You can type in The Window, Matt Russell, The Window, sports betting Matt Russell, any of those things. You can follow me over at Twitter at mrussauthentic as well, and everything that I write gets tweeted through there. Also available over on Yahoo. We do a college football thing. We do an Monday Night Football preview. The one thing that I am going to sort of point to this week to celebrate halfway through the season, the Sunday best, the NFL best bets for all of Sunday is going to be free, no paywall for that this week. So if you've ever kind of wondered, listen, all of the stuff, the paywall comes down after the fact, so you can go back and back check and be like, how'd Matt do last week? What happened last week? Et cetera, et cetera. This week, the paywall is coming down for that for this week, 1 week only. And you can kind of play along if you want to in that instance. We did that last week for the NFL player props article. We're going to do that this week for the Sunday best. And of course, as always, we have our Thursday Night Football preview, the Saturday 7 in college football, and anything that I haven't necessarily mentioned yet that exists that people who are already over at The Window go, hey, what about that thing? That thing as well.
Yes, lots going on for sure. Got you covered on the NFL and of course the NCAA. Matt does a great job there. And I know college basketball is underway too, which is probably a whole other conversation for you. But
keeping one eye on it.
Yeah, we shall discuss that as well at a later date. But of course, my name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And of course, remember the podcast you can find on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. As I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.